The first time Yelena saw him, she thought he was asleep. He lay so still that even the thin white blanket covering his chest barely moved. Manila General Hospital wasn't too quiet, not even close. But something about the young man in bed 14 made everything around him feel muted, like the world had decided to keep its noise outside his fragile bubble. It was her second week in the Philippines, and she was still adjusting to the heat, the humidity, the sound of jeepneys honking even at midnight, and, most surprising of all, the warmth of people who smiled even when they were suffering. But nothing could have prepared her for what she heard when she checked the chart clipped at the foot of his bed. Patient, Mateo Reyes, age 26, status, surgery recommended, prognosis, critical, funding, none. She blinked. The doctor beside her sighed without looking up from his clipboard. "Don't bother memorizing his case," he said. "He's not going to make it." She stared at him. "But why no surgery?" "No money," the doctor replied, as if it were the most normal explanation in the world. "Without payment, we can't even schedule him. His family already left. They can't afford to wait here." Yelena felt a coldness wash over her, not like the cold of her Siberian hometown, but the cold that comes when something is morally wrong. She walked closer to the patient and looked at him carefully. Despite his pale cheeks and weak breathing, his face had a kindness to it. His eyelashes were long, his jaw was strong, and though his skin was sickly, there was something undeniably gentle about him. "What happened to him?" she asked softly. "Construction accident," the doctor said. "Fell from the second floor while installing steel frames. Internal bleeding. Needs surgery within a few days. But we can't do anything. He's on pain medication until..." He didn't finish his sentence, but he didn't need to. Yelena gripped the railing of the bed. Back in Russia, no, even in the worst hospital she previously worked at, leaving someone to die because they didn't have money was unthinkable. She had seen poverty. She had seen suffering, but she had never seen such calm resignation from the medical staff. She took a deep breath, then exhaled slowly. "Is there truly nothing we can do?" The doctor finally met her eyes. "If you want to help, nurse, find a miracle, because that's all that can save him now." She looked back at Mateo. Then she decided she would. The turning point began 3 hours later. Mateo woke up groaning, his fingers curling slightly against the blanket. His eyes fluttered open, dark brown, soft and uncertain. He slowly turned his head and saw her. His lips parted. "You're not from here," he whispered. It took Yelena by surprise. How did you know?" "Your eyes," he said with a faint smile. "And your accent, even if you try to hide it." She couldn't help smiling back, even though her heart was heavy. "I'm from Russia," she said. He blinked slowly, as if trying to picture snow, fur coats, and frozen lakes. "Russia. Must be cold." "It is," she said, pulling a chair closer. "But you get used to it. Maybe one day." He paused, breath catching from pain. "Maybe I can go. See snow." The simple dream hit her harder than she expected. She touched his hand gently. "We can talk about snow later. Right now you need to rest." He nodded, though she could see the fear beneath his calm expression. He wasn't stupid. He knew something was wrong. He looked around, searching for familiar faces, maybe hoping his family had returned. "They went home," he whispered to himself, bitterly, before turning his head away. Yelena felt her chest tighten. "Mateo, do you have siblings?" He nodded. "Two, both working, but they already borrowed from neighbors, from co-workers, from everyone. They said they'll come back when they can bring more money. But I told them not to. They've suffered enough." She swallowed. "You should let them stay." "Should?" "No," he said, voice firm despite his weakness. "I'm the eldest. I should be the one taking care of them, not the other way around." His words surprised her, not because she hadn't heard such sentiments before, but because she felt the sincerity in them so deeply. Russian culture taught resilience, strength, standing alone when needed. Filipino culture She was still learning, but based on what she'd seen and what she had been told, family was everything here. Everything. Yet here he was, pushing them away so they wouldn't carry the burden. "You're very brave," she murmured. He smiled faintly. "Not brave, just trying not to make my family cry." When he closed his eyes again, Yelena made her decision. She stepped outside the ward and marched toward the administrative office. A kind-looking Filipino woman with glasses looked up from her desk. "Yes, ma'am? How can I help you?" "I need to apply for funding," Yelena said. "Or charity support, or whatever program you have. I need it urgently, for patient Mateo Reyes." The woman's smile faded. Ah, Yelena repeated. "What is ah?" "We already applied," the woman said gently. "For 3 days straight. Charity funds are empty. We are prioritizing children and senior citizens at the moment." "No exceptions?" She shook her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am." Yelena clenched her fists. "What about international organizations? Philanthropists? Someone?" "There's a waiting list," the woman said. "The shortest wait time is 2 weeks." 2 weeks. Mateo didn't even have 5 days. She refused to leave the office. For the next hour, she asked questions, pleaded, negotiated, begged for any possibility. But there was none. The sun was already setting when she returned to the ward. She thought Mateo was asleep, but as she approached, his eyes opened and he looked at her with an almost apologetic expression. "Don't worry," he whispered. "You don't have to help me. I know. I know what will happen." The tears hit her unexpectedly. "I'm a nurse," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't accept that." "You don't even know me," he said softly. "No," she replied, "but I see you." He looked confused. "See me?" She nodded. "You're kind. You're selfless. You work hard to support your family. You dream about snow even though you've never felt winter. You're someone who deserves a chance." He stared at her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. "You make me sound better than I am." "You are better," she whispered. He blinked rapidly, and she noticed his eyes glistening. "Thank you," he whispered. "If I don't make it, at least I met someone like you." "No," she said firmly. "You will not die. I will not let you." She stood. "I will find a way." He chuckled weakly. "You sound like a superhero." "Maybe I am," she said with a half smile. But when she walked away, her hands were shaking. She had no plan, no idea, no contacts. She wasn't rich. She wasn't powerful. She wasn't even experienced enough to pull strings. All she had was a stubborn, burning determination. That night, she didn't go home. She spent her break outside the hospital, sitting under a flickering street lamp with her phone in her hand and desperation in her chest. She searched for charity groups, messaging them one by one. She reached out to Russian communities in Manila, to expat groups, to online forums, to anyone who might listen. Hours passed by with no reply. She felt hopelessness creeping in, but she refused to stop. At 3:14 a.m., she received a message from an unknown number. "Hello, I saw your post about the Filipino patient. How much do you need?" She froze, her breath catching. Without hesitating, she typed the estimated cost of surgery, supplies, and recovery. The reply came instantly. "Give me the hospital account number. I can transfer half now, half tomorrow." She blinked several times, staring at the glowing screen. She typed back tremulously. "Who are you?" The stranger replied, "Just someone who wants to help. A Russian living in Cebu. I know how hard it is to watch someone suffer." She nearly dropped her phone. "Why?" she typed. Another reply. "Because you remind me of why I fell in love with this country. Filipinos helped me when I first came here. Now it's my turn." Yelena covered her mouth with her hands and let out a shaky breath. She gave the account number. "Nurse Yelena, right?" the stranger typed. "Don't worry, you did the right thing." She closed her phone and looked up at the moon, whispering, "Thank you." She rushed back inside the hospital. Her shift was almost over, but she felt energized, alive, filled with sparks she hadn't felt for years. She checked Mateo, who, thankfully, was sleeping peacefully. His breathing was shallow, but steady. She stayed beside him until dawn. At 8 a.m., the official email from the finance department arrived. Funds for patient Mateo Reyes have been received. Surgery approved. Immediate scheduling advised. She gasped so loudly the other nurses looked at her. She burst out laughing, a deep, emotional laugh mixed with relief and disbelief. She ran, not walked, to the surgery department. The head surgeon raised his eyebrow. "Nurse Yelena, are you all right?" "He's getting the surgery," she announced breathlessly. "Funds came in." The surgeon blinked, then smiled. "Well then," he said, "let's save this young man." The next 2 hours were agonizing. Mateo had no idea what was happening until the surgical prep team surrounded his bed. He looked confused, eyes darting around, then landed on her. "What's happening?" he whispered. "You're getting your surgery," she said, smiling through tears. His face twisted in disbelief. But how? Where did you—" She shook her head. "Someone helped. A stranger. A miracle. It doesn't matter. What matters is, you're going to live." He stared at her, eyes overflowing. "You saved me." "No," she said softly. "I refuse to lose you." Before they wheeled him away, he grabbed her hand with a strength he shouldn't have had. If I wake up," he whispered shakily, Can I see you first?" She nodded, her heart melting. "I'll be right here." Watching him disappear behind the doors of the operating room felt like watching a piece of her soul being carried away. She sat outside the corridor, clasping her hands, whispering prayers in both Russian and English, mixing them with Tagalog words she learned from coworkers. "Mateo, please fight," she murmured. "I believe in you, so please believe too." Every minute felt like an hour, every hour felt like a lifetime. And when the surgeon finally walked out, mask down, she stood so fast she almost fainted. The surgeon smiled. He made it. The surgery was a success. Something inside her broke, not from pain, but from a release so powerful it felt like bursting into light. She covered her face and sobbed quietly, overwhelmed by relief. She didn't remember how long she stood there, shaking with gratitude. All she knew was that a life had been saved, and her world was no longer the same. Because in saving Mateo, she realized something she had forgotten after years of working in harsh hospitals. Kindness is contagious, compassion is powerful, and love. Love begins when you decide someone's life matters as much as your own. When Mateo finally opened his eyes hours later, weak but alive, the first thing he saw was her. And the first thing she felt was that this moment, was only the beginning. Mateo woke slowly, like a man rising through warm water after being held under far too long. His eyelids fluttered, his breath quivered. Everything felt strangely light, as if the pain that once crushed him had loosened its grip. His vision was blurry at first. White ceiling, soft lights, the faint hum of a machine beside him. Then he turned his head ever so slightly, and she was there. Yelena sat with her elbows on her knees and her forehead resting on her clasped hands. Her eyes were closed, exhaustion written all over her face, but even in that state, she looked peaceful, like someone who had fought a war and finally stepped into the quiet morning after the battle. He let out a tiny sound, barely a whisper, but she heard it instantly. Her head shot up and her eyes widened, sparkling with relief. "You're awake," she whispered, almost like she didn't believe it herself. He blinked slowly, taking in her face, her presence, the softness in her eyes. "You didn't leave." "Of course not," she said, smiling as tears filled her eyes again. "I promised you, remember?" He swallowed hard, his throat dry and scratchy. Did everything go well?" She nodded, beaming. "The surgery was a success. You're safe now." safe. The word hit him like sunlight. He thought he would never hear that again. His lips trembled. Thank you, Yelena. I don't know how I can ever repay you. She leaned closer, resting her hand gently on his. You repay me by living, by healing. That is enough. He closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed. For a man used to carrying burdens alone, the idea that someone, a stranger from another country, had chosen to fight for him, it was almost too much. You fought for me, he whispered. You didn't even know me, but you fought for me. She squeezed his hand. Sometimes, you meet someone, and you just know. You know they matter. He looked at her for a long moment, trying to hold back tears, failing miserably. She didn't look away. She didn't pretend not to see his emotion. Instead, she wiped a tear falling from the corner of his eye with gentle fingers. You're allowed to cry, she whispered. You've been brave for too long. He let out a weak laugh. You sound like a therapist, she grinned. Duh, maybe I am. Their laughter mixed softly, filling the recovery room with warmth. The next few days were slow but hopeful. Mateo's improvement was steady. The doctors were astonished at how resilient he was, and the nurses adored him. His politeness, his humor, and his quiet strength. But through everything, vitals checks, medication rounds, physical therapy, it was Yelena he waited for. Every shift where she appeared brought light into the room. She would walk in and say, "How's my strongest patient today?" Or she'd tease him, "Your hair is becoming wild. You will look like Siberian bear soon." And he would joke back, "Then maybe I can handle Russian winter." Between laughs and silence, between medication and rest, a bond grew, soft, unspoken, undeniable. One late afternoon, as the sun cast golden light on the hospital walls, Mateo asked the question he had been afraid to ask. "Yelena, why did you really help me?" She paused, setting down a tray of his medication. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she pulled a chair beside him and took a slow breath. "In Russia," she began, "I worked in a hospital that was cold. Not just the weather, cold inside. Nurses, doctors, patients, everyone distant, everyone numb." She looked at her hands. "I lost a patient once, a young man around your age. He died alone with no family, and I never processed it." Her voice grew softer. "I promised myself that if I ever had a chance to save someone like him, I would not fail again." She looked up, her eyes meeting his with quiet intensity. "When I saw you lying there," she whispered, "I felt the same pain I felt back then. But this time, I refused to lose." He swallowed the knot in his throat. "So you saved me because you wanted to save the memory of someone else?" She shook her head gently. "No. I saved you because you're you, Mateo. Because your life matters. Because you looked at me from that bed and I saw someone worth fighting for." He had no words, only tears. "Thank you," he whispered, "for seeing me." As he healed, she became his anchor, and little by little, he began to heal her too. One evening, when the ward lights were dimmed and most patients were asleep, he asked her something that had been on his mind. "What brought you to the Philippines? Really?" She chuckled. "Would you believe me if I said warmth?" He smiled. "The weather?" "No, the people," she said. "Filipinos smile even when life is hard. They laugh even when they have little. They help each other in ways I've never seen in Russia. When I first came here, a tricycle driver saw me struggling with my luggage and led me all the way to my apartment, without asking for money. He even helped fix my electric fan when it broke. For free." He chuckled. "Sounds like us." "Exactly," she said. "I came here to learn how to feel again." He nodded. "And did you?" She looked at him meaningfully. "Duh." The days turned into weeks. Mateo's wounds healed, his strength returned, and he could finally walk with assistance. His smile returned too, brighter than ever. But as his discharge date approached, An unexpected anxiety grew inside him. What if she disappears from my life when I leave this hospital? What if all this was just a moment? What if she only cared because I was her patient? He tried to bury these thoughts, but they gnawed at him. On his second to last day in the hospital, he found her standing by his bed, watching him walk on his own for the first time without support. He was proud of himself until he saw her eyes glistening. He frowned. "Hey, what's wrong?" She wiped her eyes quickly, trying to laugh it off. "Nothing. I'm just happy. You're leaving soon." The way she said it didn't sound happy at all. He stepped closer, wobbling slightly but determined. "Yelena..." She shook her head. "No, Mateo. Don't ask me to explain. You need to go back to your family, your job, your life. I was just someone who helped you get there." Her words stabbed him. Is that what you think you are to me?" he whispered. She didn't reply. He took a breath and steadied himself before taking her hand. "I want you in my life," he said, "not because you saved me, but because you cared for me like no one else ever has." She shook her head again, tears falling despite her efforts. "You're saying that because you're still emotional. When you return to your real world, you will forget me." "Then I don't want my real world," he said firmly. "Not if it doesn't have you." Her eyes widened, surprised, shaken. "Mateo," she whispered. "You're not just my nurse," he said. "You became my friend, my strength, my reason to fight." Her breath caught. "And maybe," he added with trembling honesty, "you could be something even more." She froze. Her chest rose and fell quickly. He held her gaze. "I want to know you outside this hospital," he said. "I want to hear your stories, try Russian food you always talk about, show you places here, introduce you to my family properly, not from a hospital bed." He laughed at the last part. Her lips trembled. "You're serious?" "For the first time in my life," he said. "I think I truly am." She didn't answer, not with words. Instead, she leaned forward and hugged him, a gentle, trembling embrace that meant more than anything she could have said. He hugged her back carefully, feeling her heartbeat against his, feeling all the fear and hope and affection tangled between them. "I was scared," she whispered. "I thought once you healed, I would become part of a sad memory, someone you would leave behind." "I won't," he said. "I can't." The next morning, he was discharged. His family arrived with tears, gifts, lechon manok, pancit, and enough hugs to suffocate him, but Mateo only looked for one person. Amid the chaos of relatives and neighbors filling the hospital corridor, Yelena stayed at the side, smiling shyly. His mother approached her, holding Yelena's hands tightly. Maraming salamat po," she said tearfully. "Hindi namin kayang bayaran ang ginawa mo para sa anak namin." Yelena shook her head, eyes soft. "Your son saved himself. I just gave him a chance." His mother hugged her firmly, a warm, grateful embrace that felt like family, real family, and for the first time in years, Yelena felt like she belonged somewhere again. After the goodbyes, as Mateo was being wheeled to the exit, he turned to her. "Will I see you tomorrow?" he asked. "You better," she said with a grin. "I want to make sure you're resting and not climbing construction sites again." He laughed, his heart light. "Tomorrow, then." "Tomorrow," she echoed. And so it began. Their tomorrows kept coming. Yelena visited him every day at home, bringing Russian dishes his family always mispronounced but loved anyway. She taught his siblings how to say spasibo, and in return they taught her expressions like grabe, sana all, and charot, which she used proudly, even when she didn't fully understand them. Mateo walked her to jeepney stops. She brought him ice packs when he overworked himself. They watched Filipino teleseries together, and she forced him to watch documentaries about Siberia until he shivered despite the Manila heat. One evening, he walked her home slowly, still careful with his steps. The moon was bright. The street was quiet. She suddenly stopped and looked up at him with a soft seriousness. "Mateo," she said, "I want to ask you something." He tilted his head. What is it? She took a breath. You once said you wanted to see snow. He nodded. Well, she said, smiling shyly. I want to show you. He blinked. Show me? Snow? She nodded. I want you to come to Russia with me one day, she said. When you're fully healed, when you're ready. I want you to meet my family, see where I grew up, see the winter I escaped. He stared at her, stunned. Are you serious? He asked. She smiled. Da. He felt emotion rising in him, sharp and warm. Yelena, that's a dream. She touched his cheek gently. Then let's make it real. The wind blew lightly, warm and soft. And then, in that quiet Manila street, he kissed her, softly, gently, gratefully. She held his face with both hands, kissing him back like someone who finally found home after a long journey. Months passed. Mateo fully recovered, his scars healed, but the gratitude he felt never faded. Meanwhile, Yelena renewed her contract, choosing to stay in the Philippines longer, not because of work, but because her heart was no longer in Russia. One December morning, while finishing his physical therapy, Mateo said something that made her freeze. I've been saving, he said, staring at his shoes nervously. Every day, every peso, because I want to come to Russia with you next year. She blinked. Mateo, you don't have to. I want to, he interrupted softly. Not just to see snow, but to see the place that made the woman who saved my life. Silence hung between them for a moment. Then she hugged him tightly, burying her face in his shoulder. You didn't just survive, she whispered. You gave me a reason to stay, a reason to hope. And you gave me a second life, he replied. The world was vast. Russia was cold. The Philippines was warm. They came from different worlds, different languages, different histories. But kindness doesn't care about borders. Gratitude doesn't care about nationality. And love cares only about who holds your heart. Years later, people would ask them how they met. Mateo would just smile and say, she saw me when everyone else gave up. And Yelena would answer, he taught me how to feel the warmth I'd been searching for. Their story became one that doctors remembered, nurses retold, and families shared during gatherings, proof that compassion, even from a stranger, can rewrite destinies. And in a snowy Russian town one winter night, a Filipino man and a Russian nurse stood together under gently falling snow. Mateo held out his hand, letting the flakes land on his palm. So this is snow, he whispered, amazed. Yelena leaned against him, smiling. Da. It's cold, he said, laughing. So is my heart, she joked, before you warmed it. He kissed her forehead. No, he whispered. You warmed mine first. And there, under the quiet snowfall, they held on to each other. Two lives that almost never met. Two hearts that were never supposed to cross. And two souls that proved one truth. Sometimes the greatest miracles start with a stranger who refuses to look away.